What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about this new Switch, of course, and we're going to be talking about the discussion going on about exclusive games on this new Switch. But of course, if you're new to this channel, you may be surprised at some of these things that we talk about that you may not be aware of, because a lot of this stuff has been talked about for quite a long time, actually, and was actually even one of the original rumors for this new Switch was talked about quite a long time ago. So, first of all, we'll get to the exclusive game thing in just a minute, but first of all, this new Switch has been rumored to have 4K output and exclusive games ever since it was pretty much originally reported on around late 2018. And this rumor goes back all the way to Review Tech USA, actually. The Wall Street Journal reported that Nintendo was looking into developing quite possibly new screen technology or working with some companies to research and develop new technology for a new Switch coming in 2019 is what they originally reported. Of course, that didn't happen, and then reports kept going on and on and on about a new Switch coming, new Switch coming, new Switch coming. We had the pandemic in 2020 until finally now it looks like it is going to come out this year, finally, after all those reports dating back all the way to late 2018, which was 2.5 years ago, which you can believe it's been that long. So we've been covering it here. We've been going over all the development aspects of the console, all the factual information, actually, that we've been having on this channel, no rumors or anything. We've been going over how Nintendo has been working on this console since late 2018. All that fun stuff we did in 2019 with all the development lining up with it, all the things they were working on. It was all really fun stuff. And of course, that rumor though was a constant. 4K output and exclusive games for this new Switch. And the exclusive games part was something that was very controversial at the time because people didn't want to believe that was going to happen. Like, Nintendo would never do that. They would never have exclusive games on this new Switch. It's just not going to happen. They would separate the marketplace, you know. They would have one, group buying the Switch for this and one group buying the Switch for that. They would never do that. But that's been the constant rumor, guys. So this stuff that you're hearing lately about 4K output from Bloomberg, which of course kind of supports, of course, those original rumors, but this whole thing about exclusive games, old news. It's been going on ever since the beginning for this new Switch, which is kind of cool because that means that gives a lot of credit to that original rumor about Review Tech. He even said that his source talked about a 2020 release time frame or so back then even. And of course the delays for next generation consoles they have for all their games. As you can see now in 2021, there's a big drought going on with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X for games. It's kind of, quiet out there. A lot of people think that those consoles could have been delayed till 2021 themselves, but here we are, of course. So now we have what looks to be the release of this new Switch coming this year very soon. And of course, exclusive games are being rumored yet again for it. Again, nothing new, old news. But the discussion comes back, right? So discussion is going to come back here in this video about why this means absolutely nothing as far as being bad news for Nintendo fans or being bad news for Nintendo. No, there is no bad news about having exclusive games on this new Switch. And here's some very clear reasons why you can take this, and understand for yourself as to why this doesn't really mean anything bad as far as having exclusive games on this new Switch. Now, the Nintendo Switch has gotten some very, minimal amount of AAA third-party ports to even run at all on the console, much less being good and acceptable ports, right? So the best ports have been from Panic Button with Doom Eternal, Doom 2016, and of course some of the examples of being quote-unquote bad ports have been things like The Outer Worlds. Now, there's nothing wrong with the developer, of course, who ported the game over to the Switch with The Outer Worlds. Simply, there's issues with the Switch. They can't run certain games, and these developers go ahead and try it anyway. A lot of times they simply just don't have good results. And then that leads to less ports coming to Nintendo, and of course less money for Nintendo, less revenue for them to make. So here we have this new, more powerful Switch that's been talked about and rumored for so long, 4K output, exclusive games coming to it. That won't segregate the Switch market. And the reason is because the games that will be exclusive to this new Switch, wait for it, will never come to this original Switch in the first place. So you can't actually segregate a market that isn't there. You can't segregate something that will just continue on getting the same games it always got in the first place. And there's no segregation there. The audience that's already there buying the current Switch or already owns the current Switch, they'll continue to get those same games, same first-party games from Nintendo, and they'll continue not getting AAA third-party ports that the other consoles are getting on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and PC. The current Switch will continue to not get those. So there's no market segregation there. The new Switch has the opportunity to get those ports, which means the audience would also have the opportunity to play them on that console, thus forming a different audience there, of course, maybe quite possibly the same audience who just buys a new Switch. But there's no, separation there. Nobody's being left out. You can't be left out of something that is being closed off and you'll never, get out, from there in the first place. Switch is on this path, new Switch is on that path. This Switch is going to get certain games. This Switch is going to continue to do what it's always done and get the same games it's always had for the last 4 years, which is a lot of indie games, the occasional AAA port. That's a quote-unquote miracle, like Doom Eternal, for example, which I think is a technical marvel. That's absolutely amazing. Panic Button did a great job in that game, but those are few and far between. That is not the norm on the Switch, guys. You have to admit. When you see a port like that, those games are basically miracles. Like, wow, you did this on the Switch. Wow, I mean, you never see that, right? So why not have a console that just does that normally without having so much pain and effort to being put in from developers, and release that, and you get the games you want to play on your Nintendo console. It's not about leaving fans out. It's about getting games for Nintendo. Nintendo's all about getting your money, right? So to get your money, they need to release hardware that is up to date and to get the games from these developers, because there's a lot of money to be made from these games, you have to admit, right? Can you imagine how much money and revenue Nintendo would make with ports like Resident Evil Village, Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, and just from Capcom right there, Monster Hunter World, all these big multi-million seller games having the opportunity to come onto Nintendo's platform that they wouldn't have at all. It would be ignored or just not ported to the original Switch. They have the opportunity to come to Nintendo for this new Switch. It kind of makes the install base of the Nintendo Switch irrelevant. 80 million consoles sold means nothing if the developer can't or won't port their game onto that console. It's all about development costs too, right? So the cost of porting these games to the current Nintendo Switch might be too much for these developers to risk, because the sales that they estimate they will get on the current Switch will simply not be enough to make up the money they put in and the effort they made to port them to that console. So having an 80 million install base, that sounds great, but if the amount of sales they could get on the console simply is not going to be enough to make up the cost it took for them to port it to the console, they're simply not going to do that. A good example of this is most likely BioWare with Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 on the Wii. They could have ported that to the original Wii, right? Put all this money and effort into porting it to the Wii. 100 million consoles sold, right? Why didn't it get a Mass Effect port? Those are huge games. Why didn't the Wii get the Mass Effect trilogy? It should have, right? It was a huge seller, all that install base. Well, most likely the development cost was too high for BioWare to risk the amount of sales they would need to get to make up the development costs they would need to make money back on that port. And also the downgraded visuals, they would have to put so much downgrade on that game to run on the Wii. Quite possibly it wouldn't even look like the same game, or would look downgraded so much that fans would just buy the version that looks better on other consoles. There's a lot of things going on there. It's also how good the quality can be to make people want to even buy it in the first place, not just because, not just to have it on your console. The quality needs to be there too. So this is where this new Switch comes into play. To have the opportunity to play these games on a new Nintendo Switch console, you should be very excited for, in my opinion. I'm excited to play games on a new Nintendo console that gets AAA ports, of course. Remember, fans of Nintendo, we gotta try to separate yourself from being a fan of a piece of plastic and being a fan of a company and a fan of their games. You gotta separate the two. Being loyal to a piece of plastic and wanting the games all to come to that one piece of plastic doesn't make any sense. If you want to be, having all the games as a Nintendo fan, you're going to embrace having a new console to play them on. Simple as that. And also something to keep in mind about Furukawa. He recently said in that Nikkei interview, and it's been translated a little bit more by Kotaku and their translators there, but he said that the Nintendo Switch is at its midway life point, basically like midlife. But he added something to it that a lot of people didn't talk about, and it could be taken in a certain way that leaves the door open for this new Switch actually, is that the current Switch, at its midway life cycle, quote unquote, Furukawa added to that by saying that the current Switch has the ability to play as home and as a portable device. And he said that they could be finding new ways of play for the rest of its life, basically, the rest of its life cycle. And what new ways of play have they added to the Switch? Since its 4-year run, it's been the Switch Lite and it being a portable device. So theoretically, Nintendo could be positioning this brand new Switch as the replacement for the flagship home console, variant of the Switch that, specializes in playing at home on your TV at 4K here and up-res or what have you. And of course, a better screen. It'd be the premium flagship new version of the Switch. And the old Switch could then take the place of being more of a portable focused device, still getting the same games as far as running on both. The games that are released on the old Switch will still, of course, be released on the new Switch. But if some of these AAA third-party ports that just can't run on the old one will simply go to the new one as the new flagship console. That's one way you could take it from Furukawa, by saying that the midway life of the Switch could be, construed in a way to have more play styles, and obviously this new Switch Lite that they brought out in 2019 does that. It's a handheld. So that's one way you could think about it. The Nintendo's positioning themselves in a way that they could introduce a brand new flagship console and have it bring new experiences as far as 4K output, AAA ports, new features, better Joy-Cons, improved, controls and things like that, better audio. All those things could be on this new Switch. Nintendo could easily do that and make the case for it that the original Switch is being purposed more as a 3DS type of device, still getting as many of the same games as possible, but of course it is going to be the tier that is a different aspect of the Switch consoles. So we'll have to wait and see what they do, but just want to make that clear. We have a lot of possibilities here Nintendo is working on that could be coming out to fruition here soon, so it's very exciting. But also, just a reminder though, this information you're hearing is all old news. It's nothing new, guys. The rumor has been out there already. Exclusive games have been there since the beginning. 4K output since the beginning when this started. There is nothing new here. Simply, possibly coming true. That's the only thing that might be finally happening. So, all great stuff. Alright guys, if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. And I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.